This is Tekken.
That's gonna be it! Super Kuma!
We have an animal of a champion here!
Panda. Really?
For the longest time, Tekken was fighting games' best-kept secret.
Tekken was never really the popular game like that.
For years, it lived in the shadows of more popular fighting games, more known fighting games, more competitive fighting games. But when the other games fell flat, Tekken finally got its shot. Its chance to prove that none of that was true, that Tekken could be the biggest, best, and most exciting fighting game on the planet. And this is its story.
2 seconds! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Get ready for the next battle.
Despite consistent commercial and critical success, Tekken was rarely the biggest competitive game in the scene. These days though, you'd be hard-pressed to call it anything other than the most exciting fighting game in the world.
No time. What's he gonna do? Hey, you can think he's gonna have to go low. There's no time left. Oh snap! Are you serious? Oh my God! Kudan is crazy. My God!
Like most of the genre's foundational works, Tekken wasn't always the game we know today. Tekken began its life as a tech demo, a chance for its developer Namco to prove their designers could make 3D characters that looked as good as the competition. But as the weeks and months went on, the experiment became a fighting game, first called Rave War and later Tekken. Tekken, meaning Iron Fist in Japanese, was built as a cheaper alternative for arcades looking for a game like Sega's innovative 3D hit, Virtua Fighter 2. It had a similar aesthetic, similar gameplay, even similar characters. And that all makes sense since the game shared a director. But Tekken had something that its biggest competitor didn't: a PS1 port.
And it was like a Christmas gift that I saw my dad, hitting it in like a shelf with other PlayStation games, but I'm like, Tekken, what's this,
Being on the best-selling console of the era helped Tekken overtake Virtua Fighter in the 3D space, and it put it neck and neck with its other major competitor, Street Fighter. But there were other things that helped Tekken stand out. It might not have been first to the punch, but it was one of the most finely tuned 3D fighters. It also had a more involved story than its competitors, which came alongside some extremely memorable characters. And perhaps more importantly, its combat was a little more rooted in reality than the plasma-chucking anime-esque competition. As the years went on and Tekken evolved, that focus on hard-hitting action right out of a kung fu movie made it stand out even more. Sure, a bear fighting a guy in a leopard mask wasn't exactly realistic, but it was definitely cool. Between the gameplay and the aesthetics, Tekken drew in a lot of people.
It's like a mixture of over-the-top and realism that is just perfect when combined.
And it was just different. It was different, but it was interesting. I like the way the moves look when they hit, like it was dynamic, it was very flashy.
Though it took a few games to sand off the rougher edges, Tekken turned many players into fans for life. And no one exemplifies that more than Nii, the man widely considered the greatest Tekken player of all time.
철권은 되게 어렸을 때부터 했는데 철권 1부터 했거든요. 그게 94년도인데 제가 진지하게 시작한 거는 2004년 철권 5 때부터 시작했습니다. 그때는 이제 보면 막 사람이랑 곰이랑 막 이렇게 싸우고 있었는데 호랑이 가면 쓴 캐릭터도 나왔고 그게 너무 좀 신기했어요.
Nii is the model Tekken player. Skilled, dedicated, and in love with the game. So much so that he paid out of pocket to run tournaments and get people playing the game. But Nii's efforts didn't begin until much later, after Tekken really took off.
So Tekken 3's launch was a really, really big deal, not just for Tekken, but I feel like for games in general, right? Tekken 3 is where it went from like, oh, just another fighting game to the game everyone had to own, right? It was like a reason to have a PS1 at that point.
Tekken 3's elaborate mo-capped graphics and stronger, more competitive design led to near universal acclaim. It sold millions of units and broke Tekken into the mainstream. All of a sudden, Tekken was the biggest fighting game in the world, but fighting games as a whole were about to face their greatest obstacle. Western arcades died in the late 90s, and they took a lot of genres with them. Shmups, beat-em-ups, light gun games, all gone in a flash. And plenty of developers were caught flat-footed when their cash cows no longer had an audience, which meant that as the PS2 came out and marked the beginning of a new generation for gaming, fighting game developers were forced to rethink their games. Street Fighter all but went away, and with Sega's departure from the console space, Virtua Fighter games went from yearly to once per console generation. But Tekken survived these lean times and even thrived.
So from the get-go, Tekken was never really the popular game like that. And so we just had to play for the love of the game. And that was kind of how it was for Tekken 4, Tekken 5.
While Tekken 4, 5, 6, and Tag 2 didn't quite hit the critical and commercial highs of Tekken 3, the games performed well and kept Tekken chugging along while much of its competition all but vanished. And it allowed Tekken's competitive community to thrive too.
Our 2K10 Evo champion. Core going to win.
Oh, he gets it. This could be it.
I think this is it.
This
folks.
might be it, folks.
Give it up.
And he gets it.
2011 Evo World Champion, DMG Core.
Tekken's competitive scene started like pretty much any other fighting games. Arcade showdowns evolved into local tournaments that slowly grew larger and larger. It had a place at EVO, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world, which is where some people began to learn about how international the game really was. By then, many in the West realized that Tekken's best players didn't just come from North America, Japan, and Europe. There were strong competitors from all over the world, particularly Korea, where Tekken's very best still trained in packed arcades.
But if you find old videos of arcades in Korea, not every arcade, not all the time, but if it was an event or or just before the event, the arcades were packed. You couldn't even see any screens because it was just bodies, hundreds of bodies in the way.
At EVO 2003, Tekken's first showing at the tournament, KBM shocked the American competition and beat Ryan Hart to take first place in Tekken Tag Tournament. The Korean overlords had arrived. The mid-90s saw an economic crisis across much of East Asia, and a lot of companies went out of business, including the one that shipped Capcom's arcade games from Japan to Korea. But Namco's games still made it out, making Tekken into Korea's national fighting game.
Yeah, so Koreans have always been the gold standard in Tekken. That's because all of their top players live close together where they can kind of travel and play on a regular basis. This was especially the case back when arcades were still really popular, and the best players in the world would meet up every day at Seoul in Green Arcade to play.
Slowly, word of the Korean players started to spread throughout the rest of the world, but their dominance wasn't stopped by other players' skills. Tekken itself was slowing down. In 2009, it missed out on EVO, and the FGC pendulum swung away from Tekken.
And it was still, relatively popular in a competitive space, but the games weren't necessarily pleasing that fan base as much. There were a couple issues I think people had with some of the newer releases as time went on, and it kind of started to wane a little bit.
2008 was a huge year for the FGC. Street Fighter 4 revived competitive fighting games basically single-handedly. It brought back lapsed players and introduced a ton of fresh blood to the scene. Tekken didn't go away, but it certainly wasn't in the spotlight. And as Street Fighter exploded, Tekken began to fade. So much so that an entire generation of players could retire and all but fade from memory.
일반적인 그런 삶을 살았는데 그러던 와중에 이제 직장 생활을 하다가 직장 생활이 아니야 이제 맞아 직장 생활이 아니다.
Tekken 6 and Tag 2 were solid games, but they just weren't as big as Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Tekken was in the right place at the wrong time.
Tekken at the time was in no way what it is today, right? The local tournament might have had like 16 players at the most.
The future of Tekken was in limbo. Development on Tekken 7 was pushed back, and while the game eventually made it to arcades in 2015, it was basically unplayable for anyone in the West until June of 2017, when it came out on consoles worldwide. But amidst the missteps of Street Fighter V's release, Tekken 7 found new life. Tekken 7 did everything right. From slow motion and high tension moments to incredible hit sparks, the gorgeous graphics and the wild guest characters, it was designed to bring the hype, and that's exactly what it did. Tekken had always felt slightly out of place, slightly ahead or behind its competitors. But with Tekken 7, it was finally in the right place at the right time. Tekken 7 doesn't change the formula much. In fact, most of what made it stand out from the other fighting games in the 90s is also what makes it stand out today. It's more complicated than just about any other major competitor, which is a pretty stark departure from industry trends.
There's room for flexibility for you to be your own self and express your personality. You can have 10 people that use the same character, but they will all look completely different.
It has crazy, bone-crunching hits.
Oh,
He's going against the wall.
Is he going down?
We're going downstairs.
He should be able to get the follow-up with the screw as well.
Oh, he went for the hard combo.
Oh my gosh.
He's going to do it. He got the round.
And Martin finally on the scoreboard.
I can feel it in my loins.
And now the industry standard array of crazy guest characters. But with its competitors lagging behind, Tekken had the chance to display some incredible stories. Stories that were always there, just never in the limelight. Knee's years-long dominance continued into yet another Tekken game, forcing an entire new generation of players to respect his name.
It's gonna be very, very close though. And the Oki behind it, the Sonic thing!
The
Knee!
second hit.
Knee is your champion for EVO Japan 2018. The legend is back.
Knee's legacy is one of working his hardest to make Tekken huge, a legacy of playing as much Tekken as possible and encouraging others to play the game alongside him. And his performance in Tekken 7 only served to remind people why he's called the King of Tekken.
Oh, that might be the turn.
No.
Big, not dead. 50-50, tackle, get off! 5 seconds, 3, 2, 1, and Knee is your combo breaker champion!
Yo guys, y'all gonna tell me that one good though? Y'all gonna tell me that one good though? Of course, guys, please make some noise for Rocks Dragons Knee! Yo, that dude is a legend. That dude is actually a legend.
Then there was Kudons, who shocked the world with his return to competition.
군대 중에는 게임을 못 하지. 왜냐면은 2년 동안 군복무를 해야 되니까 게임을 할 수가 없고 2009년도에 이제 전역을 했는데 전역하고 나서는 사실 철권을 아예 안 하려고 그랬어.
As Tekken faded in the mid-2000s, Kudons went with it, choosing to get a job after finishing his mandatory military service. But after his father passed away, his search for meaning and comfort brought him back to Tekken.
그러다가 이제 5, 6년이 지나고 아버지가 이제 돌아가셨어. 아버지가 돌아가실 때 이제 내가 마음이 너무 허하더라고. 마음이 너무 허해가지고 이거를 좀 어느 정도 내 자신을 잡아가는데 뭐가 필요할까 이제 생각을 하던 와중에 철권이 다시 떠오르더라고. 그래서 집에서 한두 달 정도 그러니까 움직이는 거랑 레버를 손을 잡는 거랑 이런 것부터 연습을 하고 이제 아케이드에 가서 다시 복귀를 했지.
And once he came back, he showed the world why he was feared in his prime.
Kudan's the legend, the ghost of Tekken past. He's been doing this since the beginning. Kuma doesn't have many opportunities here, but again, teleports out of there, last chance. Man, wow. What an impressive game from Kudan. The time!
What's he gonna do? There's no time left. Got him with it. There's no time left, and that is gonna do it.
Oh, that is it. What a way for JDCR. The end for JDCR. The standing. Oh, look at the crowd.
And we are, of course, in our grand finals, it's going to be a 3 out of 5. If Kudans wants to be the global champion, he has to win 2 sets. No time. What's he going to do? Hey, you're going to think he's going to have to go low. There's no time left. Oh, snap! Are you serious? Oh, my God. Kudans is crazy. My God. Hey,
The rage.
oh, this
Oh
is
my
big.
God.
This one does so much
So
damage.
huge. So huge.
Oh, like the wall. Oh, he got it.
He got it! Kudans is your global champion!
And they torso
The
touched.
celebration!
Congratulations to Kudans from South Korea. He is your 2017
Wow.
Tekken 7 World Champion.
But Tekken's renaissance didn't just spotlight legendary Korean players. In America, where most players didn't get access to Tekken 7 until it was released on consoles, a group of dedicated players was ready to overthrow the Korean overlords. Anakin, a perennial American favorite, won Combo Breaker 2016, earning a direct spot in the King of the Iron Fist World Championship.
And Rip really not happy. If we could get a quick switch at the end so we could see his face.
I think that's it. Oh, man.
Oh, he's
In clean
he's
rounds,
already
Anakin
up.
takes it.
The handshake.
But instead of taking the spot and sitting out the rest of the year, Anakin decided to decline and earn his way back into the tournament.
Yeah, I remember in 2016 for the very first Tekken Tour in the North American region, they had a very funny rule where each tournament winner would qualify into the national finals. But if you qualified, you couldn't enter. And in order to, re-enter in these tournaments, you would have to relinquish your spot in order to even compete. I was in a position where I was able to go to a lot of tournaments and travel and compete. So I wanted to make the most out of that opportunity, and I didn't want to let that rule kind of stop me.
His story of perseverance and dedication to the game was outdone, though, by a player from the middle of nowhere who was ready to take the world by storm. Arslan Ash, a Pakistani player with next to no experience on the world stage, came out of nowhere to win EVO Japan.
Oh my God! The tension here. Paul's such a hard-hitting character here. You got to be ready for it.
Pistons, Arslan trying to close out the tournament.
But he's pushing him towards the danger zone.
Oh, in the backswing.
He's in
He's
red
in
though.
range again. He's the Phoenix ahead. He's the Phoenix behind.
Oh, he done it. It's over.
Arslan's gonna get the tournament. Arslan, he's your EVO Japan champion.
Pakistan taking the tournament over the Philippines.
Despite a terrible travel schedule, visa issues, and the fact that he came from a scene almost no one knew existed, Arslan prevailed. And then he did it again.
All right, guys, this is the moment we have probably all been waiting for. We have the shining star of Pakistan, Mr. Arslan Ash.
Sidestep block, going right every time.
Oh, what a whip punish!
He's got rage.
He's gonna resplat at the wall.
He's got rage. It's gonna hurt.
Oh my
He's
God.
dead. Wow. Incredible. What a game. But he can just as easily tighten it up and make it so hard for me. Wow. Wow. And just like that, Arslan Ash, so dominant
What a
out of
statement
Pakistan.
there.
This is crazy.
What's gonna happen right now? Knee looking for this opportunity.
I'm holding my breath.
Oh! They trade blows.
Oh, man, that was a crazy trade. Arslan cementing his position as the best Tekken player on the planet, untouchable.
Arslan became the first player to win both EVOs and the unquestionable best Tekken player in the world in under a year. He put Pakistani Tekken on the map and showed the world that Tekken was about more than just Korea.
Bro, he's still undefeated against
Yeah.
me. Not just that, he is the champion.
Wow.
And I don't think anyone's going to forget this. EVO Japan champion, EVO World champion.
Making history.
Tekken 7's meteoric rise finally put it back on the same level as its competitors. And that recognition finally let these stories, years in the making, reach the masses. Tekken has the best gameplay, the best moments, and the best storylines. It has to be taken seriously as a competitive fighting game. It's unignorable.
Look, there's just no way on earth you can ignore Tekken 7 right now, right? It's got the best looking game, it's got some of the best gameplay, I think, it's got some of the best storylines. A couple other fighting games this generation kind of faltered out of the gate, and they're great now, but they took time to get there. Tekken 7 came out great and has only gotten better, and it's only gonna keep getting better.
What many call Tekken's renaissance was earned. The game survived years of lean times, years of keeping a game alive when fewer and fewer people cared, years of championing the most difficult game, the most complicated game, while the industry moved away from that. Right now, at this moment, Tekken has what almost no other fighting game in the world does. A fully united community in love with the game, continuously pushing it forward. A community grinding it out, celebrating champions from all over the world, and a community that is always ready for the next battle.
Thanks for watching. If you want more content like this, hit the sub button and ring that notification bell. For unique bite-sized videos you won't find anywhere else, hit up our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages.